بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. سائل يسأل فيقول: ما حكم صلاة الكسوف؟ وهل يدل قوله صلى الله عليه وسلم: فإذا رأيتموها فادعوا الله وصلوا، وقوله صلى الله عليه وسلم: فافزعوا إلى الصلاة على الوجوب? Someone asked the question, what's the ruling on the kusuf prayer? And when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, فَإِذَا رَأَيْتُمُوهَا, so when you, فَإِذَا رَأَيْتُمُوهُمَا, فَإِذَا رَأَيْتُمُوهُمَا, when you see the two, the lunar eclipse or the solar eclipse, فَادْعُوا اللَّهَ وَصَلُّوا, invoke Allah and engage in prayer. And the Prophet ﷺ statement, فَافْزَعُوا إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ, run to the prayer, run towards prayer, hasten towards prayer, flee towards prayer. Do these two hadiths, these two statements of the Prophet ﷺ, do they prove and do they show that it's obligatory to make the kusuf prayer? I.e., what's the ruling on the kusuf prayer? And these two hadiths here, do they state that the kusuf prayer, the prayer for the eclipse, is mandatory, that it must be made, it must be performed? Al-jawabu, salatul kusufi sunnatun mu'akkadatun لما ورد فيها من الأحاديث الصحيحة وليست واجبة عند أهل العلم، لقول النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لما سأله بعض الوفود عن الصلاة وأخبره بأن عليه الصلوات الخمس، فقال السائل: هل علي غيرها؟ قال لا إلا أن تطوع. The answer states, prayer for the eclipse is highly recommended. And the reason why it's highly recommended, the several hadiths regarding it. Okay, however, it doesn't mean, the Mufti says, that it's mandatory. The people of knowledge don't say that it's mandatory. And the proof that it isn't mandatory, i.e., despite the fact that those previously mentioned hadiths outwardly state that it's mandatory, whereas the Prophet ﷺ commanded them, فَافْزَعُوا, fi'l amr, he commanded them to run, hasten to prayer. And the Prophet ﷺ says, فَإِذَا رَأَيْتُمُوهُمَا فَادْعُوا اللَّهَ وَصَلُّوا. And when you see the two, or one of the two, and or invoke Allah and pray. The reason why it isn't obligatory, even though those hadiths command us to pray, is that the Prophet ﷺ, when he was asked by that delegation, those people who went to him asking him about Islam, asking him about the daily prayers, etc., the Prophet ﷺ informed him that there were 5 prayers obligatory. 5 prayers in the day and the night that he must make. The man, the Bedouin man, the delegate, he asked him, هَلْ عَلَيَّ غَيْرُهَا, do I have to make other prayers? Any other prayers? And the Prophet ﷺ said, no, unless you wish to do extra, unless you wish to do more, unless you wish to make additional prayers. This fatwa is given by Sheikh Aziz ibn Abdillah ibn Baz. May Allah have mercy upon his soul. And the fatwa is clear that you don't have to make the eclipse prayers. As a further benefit, further clarity, this is a very long, ongoing argument and debate among the scholars of Islam with regards to many prayers, such as the prayer is known as Tahiyatul Masjid. When you enter the masjid, do you have to make 2 before you sit down? Or janazah prayers, or other prayers over which the scholars, they differ, or some say they're obligatory, and the majority of scholars say they aren't obligatory, even though the Prophet ﷺ commanded the people to do them, or ordered the people to do them, or never left them off, etc., etc. And one of the ways, one of the qara'in as-sadifa an al-wujub, one of the context clues that a prayer is not obligatory is the fact that the Prophet ﷺ said only 5 prayers are mandatory. So when we have a hadith, according to these scholars, that commands us to make a prayer, they say that it's recommended. Even though it's a command to pray, they say it's recommended because the Prophet ﷺ said there are only 5 prayers obligatory in the day and the night. Along with the hadith of Mu'adh, when the Prophet ﷺ sent him to Yemen, and he told Mu'adh to tell the Jews of Yemen that Allah made 5 prayers obligatory upon them in the day and the night, and that's it. So that is the rationale used here by this Mufti, Sheikh bin Baz, rahimahullah ta'ala, and many other scholars with regards to prayers not being obligatory, even though the hadiths clearly state to or command one to perform them. All right, so as we've explained in many classes over the years, with regards to the theory of fiqh, whenever we have a verse in the Quran or hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that commands us to do a thing, that thing should be obligatory. Unless there are other hadiths that state that it's only just recommended, or even if it doesn't state that, but scholars of Islam harmonize between one hadith stating the companions should do something, they need to do something, and another hadith that the Prophet didn't do it. And the same applies to haram and makruh. The Prophet ﷺ said, do not drink standing. And then another hadith says that the Prophet ﷺ himself, he drank standing. So they say that the prohibition of drinking standing, meaning is just disliked, makruh. With the proof that the Prophet did it, and if it was absolutely haram, he wouldn't have done it. And if we didn't have that second hadith stating that the Prophet did it, then it would be haram. So the default, when the Quran and the hadith says, do not do this act, do not perform this act, do not make this statement, don't sit like this, don't drink like this, don't relieve yourself like that, don't wear this, then those acts are haram until the other texts state that it's only just makruh. And the default is not makruh when there's a prohibition. And when we find a commandment in the Quran and Sunnah, those acts are obligatory until they're clearly proven to just be recommended. Everyone understand the rule? Wallahu ta'ala alam.